Today, I'm going to be driving this thing. It is the Jaguar XF Sportbrake. But it's not just any old Jaguar XF. Oh no, this is the new version, and it has been thoroughly updated in 2021, although you wouldn't really know it because, unless you're a car fan like I am, it doesn't actually look all that different on the outside. But trust me, there are some huge upgrades, and we're going to go through them right here. I also want to see whether it's become a better rival to the likes of the BMW 5 Series and Mercedes E-Class. But before I get into all of that, remember to hit the like button and subscribe because we've got plenty more awesome videos just like this one. Now, the new XF looks a lot like the old XF in all fairness, but there are some subtle differences to tell them apart. So the new version has a bigger and more prominent grille. And that kind of reflects where the XF sits in Jaguar's lineup. So before, you used to have the XE as the entry-level car, then you had the XF as the mid-range, and the XJ as the top spec. But they've got rid of the XJ now, and they're going to replace it with an electric car, but they're not doing that anymore. So the new range topper is the XF, and therefore has a more prominent grille. Also got some new LED headlights which give the car a real presence, and below that, new vents for cooling of the brakes. So they look a little bit like the old ones, but they're just a little bit more simple, a bit more angular around here. And on the old car, you used to have a strake that ran along the bottom here. That's no longer part of the car. You get 18-inch wheels on both the standard and our dynamic cars, but these are the optional 19-inch wheels in gloss black. But there are actually quite a few different wheel options to choose from. Now, the car we have here is the Sportbrake, which is Jaguar's fancy name for an estate car. So it just sits a little bit taller at the back for more boot space. But you can also get it as a saloon. So the best way to think of the XF is like a direct rival to the BMW 5 Series, the Audi A6, and also the Mercedes E-Class. Not a lot's changed at the back here, in all fairness. We have pretty much exactly the same lights as before. On the R Dynamic, we have a gloss black Jaguar logo back here. Probably the biggest change is down here with this kind of faux diffuser. So it's the base of the bumper that has the biggest change. You don't actually see the exhaust either, but they are there. It's just one poking out down there. This is where all the big changes are, inside the new XF. And it's just so surprising because this is technically a facelift. It's not a new generation, it's just a facelift. And I can't believe Jaguar has gone to the extent that they've done. So we've got pretty much a completely new cabin. It's almost unrecognisable to the old car, bar the odd little design here and there. So the centre console is completely new, and as you can see, it is so much more streamlined than it was before. We've got a new gear shifter down here, which is a lot like the ones that you get on the Audis, and whereas the old car had a dial, so you can rest your hand on this one when you're cruising along. And if you miss the dials of the old car, then you're in luck because the climate settings use dials, and you also have a small little dial here where you can change the driving mode, and it feels really good. Now, moving further back, we've got a couple of cup holders where I've got my trusty flask. Fits in nice and neatly. And this also kind of highlights the materials that they've been using in here. So the old XF used to have these kind of weird rubbers that looked nice for the first couple of months and then they degraded really quickly. The only place where I can see that they've retained them is in here in the cup holders. And yes, they look a little bit old, even though this has only covered 2,200 miles, but it's a cup holder. You're not really going to see it, so it does the job absolutely fine. And that leads me on to the new infotainment screen, which is just magnificent. It's an 11.4-inch panel that sits just ahead of the dashboard. And it's also slightly convex as well. So it looks like it's ever so slightly wrapped around the dash. It also helps that it is ultra clear, really crisp, deep blacks with also sharp colours as well. And it's just switched itself off. But the big benefit here is that it's really responsive. And so many car manufacturers today release sometimes quite intuitive systems, but they feel laggy and slow and run at a really low frame rate. And while this isn't perfect, it's pretty close to it. And that's paired up with a 12-inch virtual cockpit, which is absolutely stunning. Very crisp, again, like the main screen here, it's very rich in colour. You've got deep blacks. My only slight issue is it's a bit harder to navigate compared to this screen. So you can customise it on the go. So if you wanted to see the sat-nav alongside the rev counter and speedo, you can do. but you've got to go into a sub-menu to access it, and it's just a bit of a faff. A lot of cars today, you can just flick through the pages on the steering wheel. Overall though, the cabin is a huge improvement. It feels luxurious, and I do think this really does stack up against the likes of the BMW 5 Series and Mercedes E-Class. And then you look at pricing, and it starts to seem like a bit of a bargain. So prices start at £38,000 for the regular Sportbrake, but the R-Dynamic is a bit cheaper at £36,000. But there are also lots of different options packs, which means that the R-Dynamic can actually pick up in price quite quickly. Then if you want the standard saloon, you're looking at £32,500 for the entry-level car and £34,000 for the R-Dynamic. Again, lots of different packs to add on to there, which can add the price up. But then again, the car is actually really well equipped. We don't actually have that many options on here. So the main ones are the panoramic roof, which is £1,100. We've also got the Meridian sound system, which is £800 and is one of the best I've heard. And we've also got wireless charging, which would be great if it was included as standard, but that's a £300 optional extra. Being the Sportbrake, we've got a bit more roof space to play with going all the way back. And though it slopes down a little bit more towards the rear of the car, I've still got plenty of headroom. And that even takes into consideration the optional panoramic roof that we've got in, and that usually cuts into headroom quite badly. So if you're 6 foot and over, you'll be absolutely fine. Legroom as well, I've got loads. Driver's seat is in my position, and again, if you're over 6 foot, you're going to be more than comfortable in the back here. It's about the same as what you get in a 5 Series, but that thing is huge anyway. As for the seats, they're very comfy, and you kind of sit quite far back in them, so you have this kind of more like bucket feeling. It feels very sporty. Not a lot of kind of frills or anything exciting back here. We haven't got any chargers as standard apart from a 12-volt charger. No USB, again, as standard on this model. Although we do have some vents that we can at least open up and close so we can get some air in the back. And we've got an armrest, which is pretty basic. It's just a regular armrest with a couple of cup holders in it. But hey, you're in the back, you're probably going to be on your phone anyway. Now, being the Sportbrake, we have a gigantic boot to play with. Specifically, 582 litres, which is more than what you get on a BMW 5 Series Touring, but it's not quite as big as what you have on the Mercedes E-Class estate, which is the class leader. It's gigantic. Either way, though, it's a really big boot. You'll be able to get lots of stuff in here. Family holiday, no problem. But if you need somewhere to store a little bit more, there's actually a small storage compartment underneath the boot floor, but that's only available in the petrol cars that don't have the mild hybrid. If you go for a diesel mild hybrid, that storage option isn't there, I'm afraid. We've also got little hooks down here at the side to tie stuff down if you're going on a spirited drive. Speaking of hooks, little ones at the side here. Great for grocery shopping. And last but not least, you've got little quick release levers at the side here to lower the rear bench, opening up a 1,700 litre boot. You could put a bed in there. So Jaguar has streamlined the engine lineup in the new XF, which is great because it gives me less to remember. So there's only 2 petrol engines and 1 diesel to go through. So the diesel is the D200, the D standing for diesel, and the 200 loosely referring to the 201 brake horsepower that it puts out. Now, that also comes coupled with a mild hybrid system, which can be used to take off the strain of the motor when you're coasting, and can also give you an electric boost when you're, say, pulling away from traffic lights or pulling out of a junction. But the diesel is the only one that gets mild hybrid assistance. Now, the petrol cars start with the P250, the P meaning petrol, and the 250 referring to 250 PS or 248 brake horsepower in old money. Now, yeah, we don't get that hybrid assistance, but it is actually a bit quicker to 60 than the diesel, taking 6.7 seconds, 0.6 of a second faster than the diesel car. But if performance is your thing, you'll want to go for the P300, which produces 296 brake horsepower. Again, it doesn't have any hybrid assistance, but it can be spec'd in all-wheel drive and goes from 0 to 60 in 6.2 seconds, so it's pretty damn quick. Now, as I said there, you can actually spec some models with all-wheel drive systems, or they come as rear-wheel drives as standard, and they all come as standard, 1 gearbox option only, and 8-speed automatic. I often consider the best driving executive saloons in the States to be pretty much anything with a BMW badge on it, because they have really wonderful steering and feel a lot more agile. And this Jaguar has really taken me by surprise, because it is right up there with BMWs, and in fact in some ways I think it's actually a little bit better. Now I'm going to get a little bit nerdy. So this generation of XF, which originally launched back in 2015, remember this is the heavily facelifted version, was all built around an aluminium unibody design, which is not only really strong and stiff, but it's nice and light. And you can really feel it when you're behind the wheel. This is a very, very, very big car, particularly in sportback form, but it really doesn't feel it. It doesn't feel nearly as big as an A6 or a 5 Series does, just because it doesn't feel like I've got as much heft as I do in some of this thing's rivals. Coupled with that, I've got a really lovely steering system that's not only light, which again disguises some of the car's weight, but it's also really direct and just gives me enough feedback to know what the car is doing. It just makes it such a joy to drive. Now, as I touched on earlier, we've got the P250 petrol motor in this one, and it seems to do a pretty good job. I can get up to motorway speeds relatively easily. It doesn't feel like the torquiest car in the world, and I think if that's kind of what you're after, and if you're looking to put on a lot of miles, go for the diesel. And I know it's a bit strange recommending diesels in 2021. Again, Jaguar sales have also been hurt massively through the decline in diesel sales, but it'll give you the torquey punch that maybe this petrol's missing, but it'll also return a really good fuel economy. I'd say the only kind of real letdown of the driving experience is the gearbox. It can be a little bit dim-witted at times. So sometimes when you're really wanting to get a move on, put your foot down, pull out of a junction, and in this thing, it sometimes doesn't know what gear it wants to be in. So when you pull away, there's just a little bit of a lag while it's trying to figure out what gear it needs to be in, and then you can get a move on. I've also got some different driving modes to play with as well. So at the moment, I've got it in Comfort, which is just the normal comfort mode, and it feels comfortable. Eco prioritizes fuel economy, and so you might notice a slight dip in performance and responsiveness. We also have dynamic mode, which makes it feel a little bit sharper, but not massively so. It's not going to turn into an XFR if you do that. It's just going to feel a little bit nippier than before, but that's what driving modes are for. There's also a snow mode as well to give you a bit of grip when things get slippery. On the motorway at the moment, got a little bit of driver tech to play around with. There's a lane keep assistance, which comes as standard, and admittedly, other than a small little graphic in the bottom left-hand corner, I found that it doesn't actually make all that much of a difference. In fact, if you test it, if you push it to its limits, it pushes you back into your lane after you've crossed over the line, which I don't really feel like is the best use of a lane keep assist. Surely you want it to keep you in your lane rather than to put you back in your lane after you've already drifted out of it. So maybe not the best system in the world. Other than that, it is a lovely place to be on a motorway, nice and quiet. But that kind of leads me on to the pricing of this thing. So it is a little bit cheaper than the competition, but also it's pretty well equipped as standard. So a lot of its competitors, you're still going to have to add on a lot of options on top to kind of get the car that you want. And I guess that's the really key thing with the XF. It's gone from being the left field choice that you buy because maybe you like buying British or you just like Jaguars, to being a proper German car rival. It's great to drive, feels really luxurious inside, and it comes across as a bit of a bargain. This is a seriously impressive update. Great work, Jaguar.